What a trade the Lakers pulled off today. They unload the Mozgov contract. We know D'Angelo Russell probably didn't have a spot with Lonzo Ball in waiting in that 2. And Brook Lopez goes their way. He's done at the end of the year each of the other players with 3 years left on their deal. We bring in the Hall of Famer, our own David Aldridge, to break this and more down as we head up to Thursday. DA, give us a sense on both sides on this deal for the Lakers getting rid of some money, and for Brooklyn, maybe something positive to think about with D'Angelo Russell coming on.
Well, look, I mean, Brooklyn is not in a position of strength right now. So to get the opportunity to get a young guard who was the second pick in the draft just a couple of years ago and does have a lot of talent, that's something that, frankly, the Nets are not going to be able to do after having traded all their picks to Boston the last few years. So getting a guy like Russell, you're going to take a good long look at him over the next couple of years to see if he can handle a playmaking role and be the kind of talent and player that everybody thought he might be when he came out of school. They had to take Mozgov's salary on as a result. They didn't want to do that, but that's the cost of getting a chance at a young player, because really, the Nets are not in a position where they've gotten any elite young players in the draft any time in the last couple of years, and they're not going to get one in the next couple of years. So it's a reasonable gamble. And obviously the Lakers are trying to max out as much cap room as they can for 2018. And you get rid of Mozgov, who had $48 million left on his deal. This clears out an enormously big contract for them that they can now put to use going after at least one, maybe two max players. Certainly, whether they trade for Paul George or sign him, they can go after another guy now. So the dynamic for the Lakers is they have cleared out a lot of cap room. And in the meantime, next year, they get a center in Brook Lopez, who is clearly an upgrade over Mozgov and a very talented guy. Not a long-term solution for them, but he will be a good player for them next year at least.
DA, you mentioned Paul George. We know that he could be headed there anyway in free agency. What are the chances even with this deal? And does this change anything when we look at the possibility of Paul George becoming a Laker at some point here in the next couple of weeks?
Well, look, it makes it a lot easier for the Lakers to do it, because not only can they can trade for him now, right? If they get the deal that they want from Indiana, or Indiana is willing to accept the offer that the LA gives them, and then still go get another max guy in the summer of 2018. So the city that's not feeling good right now is Cleveland, because this sets up 2018 as Armageddon between the Lakers and the Clippers for LeBron James. I mean, that's the bottom line, is they are both going to be well positioned, I think, by this time next year, to make a run at LeBron James. And the more suitors that are out there that are real suitors, the tougher it's going to be for the Cavaliers to keep him. So, the Lakers, again, whether they get Paul George now or in a year, and there's nothing to indicate that that's not what's going to happen one way or the other, they are now suited to add a second elite player, a second max player, and that's the whole bargaining chip you give with a guy like LeBron James.
DZ, if the young people watching us didn't know
shake things
about
up for LeBron,
the compete level of magic, they do after watching that 30 for 30.
That's
so
right.
We knew he would want to get in there and make a splash.
That's right.
Fair enough, he's gotten off to a good start.
He's gotten off to a great start. I think Magic understands that I'm part of the old school Showtime. To your point, everyone's talking about how do I get that splash back out here in California, get people excited about the Lakers again. Yes, Doc Rivers done a good job for the Clippers, but let's bring some of that energy back. So I'm bringing in Lopez, a guy, in my opinion, still can get it done down low, scoring the basketball. I know he's not a big-time rebounder, but a solid piece.
And an underrated player as well. You mentioned solid and a big piece. KP, Kristaps Porzingis, has been all of that, the bag of chips and more. We're getting ready for the draft in Brooklyn. He was booed at one point, DA. That was a long time ago. However, a lot of Knicks fans, and I certainly should know, I grew up as one most of my life, read the paper this morning or got up on Twitter and thought that they were in the twilight zone. And it's not because they looked at their roster. They saw something about Porzingis possibly being traded. How much of a possibility is this?
Well, you can't dismiss it. The fact that they have had almost no contact with him since the end of the season is not a good sign at all for the long-term viability of this relationship between the two sides. So, that they may be taking calls, would not. It doesn't mean that anything is imminent, but it's not a good sign because a young elite scoring player should not be somebody you're making calls about. This it just shouldn't happen. So if they don't get the offer they want, I'm sure that they'll say that we never shopped them, and they would have plausible deniability. But the fact that this is even a topic is not good for Knicks fans, because he shouldn't even be on the table. I mean, that's like that he's as important to them as any young player is to any team around the league in terms of ultimately rebuilding a team around a very talented player. And we know Carmelo, one way or another, is probably not going to be there in a couple of years, but Porzingis should be a 15-year guy, and the fact that they're even taking calls is not encouraging.
Well, look, 3D, if you didn't think that Phil's approval rating could get any lower, if opening night Melo's in the lineup and KP is not, it might get there. How much does this surprise you?
I'm more shocked than surprised. Like, how do you not be able to communicate with one of your young players who you feel is part of your future? And like DA said, if he's not a part of that 10 to 15-year future plan and you're not communicating with him now, that's concerning. This is a guy that, to your point, draft night, he was booed. I was in New York. I spoke to him. He said, I look forward to changing those boos into cheers. And he did that. And you want to mess with that young talent? Phil, great coach, but right now, as a GM, Phil, I'm giving you one of these right now.